Hello, welcome again to another podcast episode on Talk Architecture, and I'm your host Naziati Muhammad Yaqub on the series of women architects in leadership roles. This is the part two of the interview with architect Lillian Tay, the vice president of Veritas Design Group. And I've introduced architect Lillian Tay before, and but the thing that I'm kind of like want to ask some more questions on her role in the Board of Architects Malaysia and also when she was the president of PAM. But before I do that, I'm going to ask, hi Lillian, how are you?
Hi, Naziati.
I'm going
Okay.
to ask you this scenario of it's getting a concern for me, and quite rightly so. I've been getting, messages and conversation where women who are at the mid-level say, positions, they find that it's kind of disheartened by could be the challenges that they face to get to top positions in an architecture company. Maybe you have observed this before, may have discussed this with people who are at this mid-level where they think, oh, I'm not going to do architecture. I mean, though they have so much potential in getting to the top position in an architecture company or even strike out on their own with their own company, so much talent that could just, they've invested so much in architecture and all the experiences, but they decided something got stuck there, maybe burnout or stress. But what would you say to them? What would you advise? Maybe you have been in that position where somebody is telling you those things, that they have those problems of wanting to continue architecture.
Yeah, I think those who have young families usually
Yeah.
face this problem of uh, having how to split their time such that they can do their tasks and commit and
Mm,
as well, fulfill their household commitments to their family,
mm,
especially some of the younger women who may just be having their first child, and today many live out without not with their parents. It becomes harder for them, and they may have to then rely on like a nanny or uh, uh, some household help to take care of the
mm,
kids, of the young kids. So, and those who feel that that's not the best that they can give, they tend to feel that they should take a break from their career,
mm,
perhaps for a while, but usually ends up that they wouldn't return to the workplace. I find
mm,
they
mhm.
they when they leave, they say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to for a few years focus on the family." But usually, it's we don't find of many of them actually return. So the perpetual challenge is how to get the men also do more of the work of caring, for the
Yeah.
children in the house, the children who are
Mm,
for whom they should have equal responsibilities. But this one,
mm,
I'm now that much older, and it hasn't changed that much really. The first expectation is that it will fall on the woman, and it's probably 1 in 100 where the households, or even more than 100, where the man may decide to take on a job that's less
very
demanding of
carefree.
time, or
Yeah.
may even take a break, from the career. But I've had many talented women who just say, I'm going to take a break because my young kids
Mm,
uh, need my time and I want to give that time. And rightly so. Um, even though those who can afford to have, employ a nanny or a helper in the house, they feel that that does not compensate that the mother has to be there, bringing up it as they want the best, and they know that that's important. So that's I don't think that has changed, over the 30 years I've worked here. I've
Yeah, you
because
said that
it's I don't know, it's the natural instinct of the mom to feel that that's so important, because that's something that once you pass that time, that to create that bond, to grow the child, that it's not going to be replaceable in the future. So it's always I would have to say it's almost always, maybe almost always, the woman who has to make that career sacrifice
yeah,
to for the children. It's always the case. You've never heard of a guy. I mean, I've hardly heard of a guy who has decided to take a few years off while the wife continues to work.
Yeah, the father instinct or his
Yeah,
husband.
yeah, it's
That's how
rare. Perhaps maybe once in 15 years, you may hear of a case like that, but
there's not much
it's
support
rare.
from the government with this regard as well. I mean, this is in general, not only architecture.
Well, I think there could be better organized care centers. You see, like for instance, I always I need to actually try and do more on this. Like in the city of KL, for instance, in every building we are supposed to have a nursery
Yeah,
in the building as for compliance. So you have to build a nursery, but then it's up to the building owners to actually run the nursery. But you see, City Hall has already done as much as they can to ensure that in the city, in the working environment, the day-to-day working environment, that there is place in every office building to that there is space for a nursery. But that's just compliance. I find it hasn't worked. You'll end up having an empty space that's not actually used, because it's not the space that's needed. It's the whole structure, the whole, the
system.
software that's needed. Yeah, you need to have people who will be manning the space, help who will care for the kids. So it doesn't work, and I've been meaning to actually raise this issue that the planning authorities need to look at it as a community thing. That's in a neighborhood, you of buildings, let's say, of a certain district, 2 or 3 streets wide, and that 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 every development needs to contribute some money towards what is would go to making little, not little, but sort of nurseries and child care facilities in that neighborhood, within a 10-minute walking distance to the workplace. Not in every building, because you will not get the critical mass in each building to able to afford the nurses and, the carers that the people will feel safe to leave their kids with. It just won't, right? Because in one building, you may have, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8, and that's not enough to of employees. So we need to take it to a workable scale. So these are some of the things that that is in my list of things to discuss with the mayor, and we've got a woman mayor, so I hope she would be more receptive
women
to that.
mayor.
Yeah, so in fact, I just saw had just seen her at a conference last week, and she had reminded me, yes, we've got to brainstorm on some things, and this is one of those that they need to look at it on a district neighborhood level, not district, neighborhood level, so that in every 2 blocks of let's say office buildings in the city, that one development may be asked to provide a facility bigger, and if they're willing, they get some incentive, some discount of their development charges, things like that, to provide that, and then they can then it's feasible to get the critical mass to run nurseries that are close to the workplace, that are workable, as opposed to now it being a requirement, everyone just puts it in, but there's not enough critical mass to hire the nurses and the carers, for women to bring their kids there while they're upstairs on level 20, and the kids on usually level 7, top of the podium, where there's some outdoor space. Yeah. So I think there's some of these to some sort of fine tuning of some of these well-meaning requirements that are not working, that could actually do, I think, potentially do a lot to help women handle
Yeah.
this perpetual issue of caring for young children and while trying to hold on to their jobs. So that's one thing, that's I'll bring up for
Architecture,
discussion.
yeah, architecture companies. I mean, your office, for example, is there a nursery nearby? Any?
No, you see, there is a space, as in every development in Kuala Lumpur, and in many of the local authorities, proportionate to your area, and there's a certain minimum that they always
Yeah,
require. There's always space. It's designated, otherwise you won't get your buildings approved. But then they are not. The authorities will not, of course, track whether you actually use it as a nursery, and you usually would a good building owner would not turn it into, let's say, a shop or something, because it's approved. The
yeah,
whole development is approved where there's space designated for a
yeah,
nursery, and
yeah,
then also a surround, things like that. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
those community services need to be achieve a critical mass. It's no point. It's not so. It's not effective to have compliance type of approach to trying to create these amenities for people in the in the working
Yeah, I know.
district.
I know what you're saying about who's going to manage it, who's going to run it. Is
Exactly.
the
You need that
question.
critical mass, right? To
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
I had a conversation with potential property developer talking about their condominium, and they were asking about universal design. So there was one point where if you want to make people stay, you can make it accessible, everything, make it really universally designed and people can be more independent as they grow older. Then there was the question, what else? What other facilities in the community space should they have? And I was remembering the discussion with doctors that they need access to healthcare. It's not a clinic per se, but doctors they manage it. The developer said they will manage it, but they will get certain weekly visits by a practitioner, a medical practitioner, and elderly people can go and have access to this healthcare within the development. So, for example, there is already thought in place by the developer about how this is an enlightened developer. I think he was
Mhm.
thinking about universal design. I mean, in Singapore, they have breastfeeding spaces for nurturing and expectant moms. Yeah. And nursing, sorry, nursing, not nurturing, nursing. They have facilities for elderly persons because of the aging population policy over there. Disabled person, of course, and young children. They look after the families with young children. So with this all policy all in mind, you it that it is translated into the built environment, but you need to have that who's going to be interested in managing and what in this community space, a canteen operator would come or a cafe operator would come and, 2-year contract or whatever. But how about these other spaces? Who's going to do that? Because they are interested, and that's where you make your money, I think. For example, if you're thinking about retirement homes, each elderly people would love to be right in the middle of the city rather than outskirts somewhere in some, after the novelty will be gone after that because you can't really visit people, you can't go to the mosque, you can't do all the shopping, right? You can't get on the bus and just go into the town center to your favorite kopitiam. So you'd be right if you have retirement homes right in the middle of the city, uh, but it's just that the walking distance, like I can only manage 400 meters. I can only manage, I mean, I'm sure for expectant mothers or nursing mothers, we're looking at a year of their lives where they need assistance to just manage their working as well as their um, role as a mother. It would, it would help a lot. You can imagine this popping up in our cities all over the place, but the entrepreneurial part where people actually manage these places is lacking.
Mm. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. That like the building authorities, like DBKL and many of the local authorities, they will impose these requirements. You have to put aside the area for kindergarten
Yeah.
or nursery.
Mm.
But then who are the operators? Because they are just imposing on each development, just doing it that way. And it doesn't, as I mentioned, it's a critical mass issue. It needs to be at neighborhood level. So
Yeah,
you would
neighborhood.
need to choose one development, impose it on that development, but then they get something in return, a reduction of the development charges, things like that. And then the rest actually have to pay, in when they get their building approvals, they need to contribute to that fund that then is moved towards creating and servicing and maintaining like the neighborhood nursery, the neighborhood sort of uh, care area.
Somebody mentioned
So
about the certified nurse, certified, what do you call, carers for the babies, or this is the problem in Malaysia where they're
yes, yes,
popping out
that's
all these
true.
things, but they're not
Mhm.
certified or they not really taking care well or abuse and stuff like that. That's the scary part. So I think that is something that needs to be. I mean, we in architecture always the infrastructure, right? The one that can design a nice
Mm.
space and stuff like that. But we, like yourself, you have to go and deal and with thinking about the system of it as well in terms of the finance and the business part of it as well. That's what you do, don't you, Lillian? A lot now at your position that you're in, being giving the chance to give your input to the mayor, etc. Um, uh, is there anything that in these committees were issues for women architects ever raised, or a, a, apart from you thinking of it as an architectural problem, but were there ever raised such things? I mean, do people who represent PAM would raise these issues where you mentioned just now that the tradition says the women has to deal with raising the family more than the men, and it's a perpetual challenge. But has it ever been raised, this issue, or it's just like, oh, women don't really want to go and like raise this issue because you have to just dig in, you just have to deal with it, you have to sacrifice for the family. And then you mentioned also about some of them never came back, and talented ones as well. Where did they go? Do you know
Mm.
what happened to them
Well,
who left?
they continue to raise their families, and then after they've grown up, they find that it's a little bit, they feel a bit disconnected from the industry or have
Yeah,
sort of not caught up. So it's very hard to get them to return to the workplace. Let's say, later on when the kids don't need them to be at home, when they're in school age.
yeah.
But that gap really, most of the time cuts short their working careers. It's very hard to come back at that time, to pick up and to catch up in a way. Uh, it's very hard for them to return to the workplace actually after 7 or 8 years. Let's say after both your kids have grown to an
They
age
were
where you
they
don't
were
need to be at
cle-
home all the time caring.
they are clever people, talented people in architecture. So where do the talent go? Where does the intellectual expression go after, if they don't follow the architecture profession, or because of course they missed out on maybe some skills in BIM or whatever, Revit, they have to catch up all these things. Like, that's my problem. But I went to sabbatical and I just do my manual drawings and then, and get bullied by those people using computers. But I'm so in love with architecture that I would do that. But, it is that seniority or that experience or the things that they need to catch up, which is a problem, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, technology, I think, is the biggest challenge where, it's moving all the time, and um, they make some skills obsolete, and
Mm.
and and but then the problem with technology, it has this flattening type of outcomes that I think the expression of the individual, when something comes from the hands of one individual through all the, his experiences, his
Mm.
his preferences and all. I
Mhm.
think once it goes into a digitalized type of production,
Yeah.
um, it leaves to be seen. I'm sure it's getting refined, and you can instruct, by Chat GPT or whatever. You have to learn not to do, but to learn how to instruct. Is that what we're
Yeah,
heading
yeah.
to?
I'm learning that
So
skill, how to prompt.
yeah, that's right. It's like we are all going to be instructors and prompters.
We're
We don't ever
dumbing
need to
down
do
ourselves.
anything.
We're
We just have
dumbing
to
down.
learn how to tell machines to do it.
Yeah, yeah, we learn
I mean,
everything.
it wants a tool, but it's perhaps one day taking away from us the tenacity to do
The
and to
sensibility,
build and to construct. Yeah, yes, that's right. Yeah,
that the
you're right. The
architects
sensibility.
lost already, that
Yeah,
sensibilities.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. The
yeah.
nuances, the
Yeah, because one learns a lot in the process of refining something. So
yeah.
it's quite tough. It's like, okay, if you don't like something, it comes out after Chat GPT's come up with it. You're gonna tell him in a different way. I mean, I don't know how you refine
Yeah.
get a product out of
Yeah.
it, right?
That's
And I think the software is still drafted by people in a like for instance, when we do it, it doesn't look like it's in Malaysia. It looks like it's a
yeah.
landscape from some French countryside, or some classic French countryside, or some crazy metropolitan,
Mm.
place like like Tokyo or something like that. You I think it's been receiving instructions from people from certain cultures, mostly, drafted by people from those cultures. So you'll have to customize it to have a Malaysian feel, the
What do you
type of.
do when your architects or your designers come to you and present you that sort of drawings that you feel like, oh my God, they look like a French
Yeah,
country? What do you?
it is a challenge. It's yeah, but you can tell. You see, like now, I was a juror in I think a competition
Mhm.
from PAM, I think a couple of years ago, and you could see either that, or was I also saw a lot of such competitions, and you can increasingly see that there is a lot of use of AI generated visuals that tend to start to look the same,
Mm.
right? And it doesn't have as much. I mean, they're very different, but it tends to have a certain lack of. There's a lot of detail, but there is some disconnects, I think is the word, disconnect. Like they have so much resources that they can't choose the way I think a human brain, with
Ah,
the years of experience, the subconscious and conscious experience and learning, that comes out when you actually produce it yourself, versus a machine that has an overload of information. And I don't know how the selection process differs from the human selection process, that it
what do you
comes
think?
out. You
Yeah,
can always see that's AI generated and that's a person generated. At the present time, you can mostly tell.
what do you think? I don't have the English word for it. What is the loss? Yeah, yeah, the loss. What is our loss when we go and do this process of digitalization? What's the
Well,
cost,
yeah, it's a shortcut lah. And then, once you're used to taking a shortcut,
Another
you
shortcut.
will be a bit slow to do it the long form, the long route. Um, so yeah. And there's a sense of similarity and sameness, a sense of the outcomes or the output that it's it's of course different each time with some instruction, but there's some sameness. You know right away, oh, that's an AI generated image. You can tell, and versus that's a more directly human constructed image.
Okay.
I'm at that stage, or perhaps maybe we are still at the early stage lah, but now you can tell right away. Usually, like during some of the competitions that we've had, design competitions, many of the jurors I see, they will right away think that, oh, this one is AI generated. That means there's some rudimentary design input, and then the rest is sort of completed by AI visualizing. So
I think you should
it's
be
a good
discerning.
shortcut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good shortcut, but I think it will tend to have a flattening in the world, where because that information is global, right, in that system. Whether you are giving instruction from Fiji Islands or whether you're giving from Tokyo or Kuala Selangor, it is going to draw from this genericized pool of information that they have from all over the world. So,
Yeah, they need to innovate another
yeah.
technology.
Yeah, the sense of that local place, the subtle features of place, of being in that area, in that neighborhood in Malaysia, or
So,
whether it's in Batu Pahat or in.
as a former educator, I mean, I was in academic. So if I were thinking about my students, and I insist on them to do manual drawings, right? Right. I mean, as far as I could, like in the second year, and out of like 40 students, maybe 10 would do it, and you can see the sensitivities that they have. So once they're in the third year, they would do digital architecture, and there goes they can't cultivate that anymore. They don't love it, They don't do their design thesis or the design process in design thesis with the manual drawings. It doesn't go to the whole thing. You know what I mean? Before you really do production drawings with computers, it's shortcut. You come to once you do the schematic and that's it. They decided, oh, they're going to hurry up, and they just produce whatever. They did not
I think
massage.
for drawing plans, it's okay because that's more rationalized, the sizing of things and the location and the relationship of the space. That's okay. Maybe in terms of like the elevation, the facade design, that one, if you
Struggle.
use
There's a
software.
lot of struggle.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
because
struggle a
I
lot
think
with
the
it.
human hand, if you were drawing it physically, of course, it's probably more what we would call painterly, whereas elevation that is constructed, from you giving plan input to that would just be a rationalized outcome of the plan and the sections and
Yeah.
yeah. So I think for plan making, it's good because plans are quite rationalized. They're all for about sizing, and of course, software is very important for modeling scenarios that you can't test. For instance, the lighting, how the light falls at different times of the year. You will get very accurate uh, calculation or forecasting of the effect that you will achieve in that. So there's also a lot of benefit in modeling, using modeling as a tool to guide the designer to refine the design or to test the outcomes ahead of building it, because we wouldn't be able to test some of that as well. So it also, there's a lot of benefit. I wouldn't say it's not beneficial, but yeah, but it's good for people when they are in university. I'm a firm believer they have to go through the original way at which
Yeah.
architects have learned how to express design, through how to rationalize
Yeah, this is a bit
creative
on
design.
architecture education, but what if I insist, just say I'm the one who called the shots in the university, right? That all
Well,
students have to do manual drawings until the fourth year they have option. At least the first, second, and third year, they have to go through the whole process. of a medium-sized building, 3 or 5 stories high, doing manual drawings and understanding where to cut the sections properly. You see a lot of bluffing, right? If they were like start digitalizing in the second year, they haven't gone through this this whole experience of doing it carefully and understanding tectonically where things are, how steel and if not everything looks like a concrete building, you know what I mean? And when
Yeah,
you
yeah.
cut
It's
the
not just
section,
drawing, but making models, I think.
yeah,
Now they can 3D print. Oh my God, that's even more a flattening process. I mean, literally. I mean,
flattening, yeah,
ironically, right? Rather than when you actually cut pieces of cardboard and pieces of timber to construct something, you are sort of in a way going through the
constructing it,
building,
yeah, building it,
even though without the actual complexities, you somewhat going through the process of building. But when you 3D print, my goodness, you totally lose that conversion from the line drawings to the three-dimensional
yeah.
thing that just 3D print. It's a useful tool, but it's definitely I think that's you lose more. I think going from hand model making to 3D printing. I think in terms of drawing, not as much. I think it's lost in translation. And when you go through CAD, AutoCAD process, CAD or whatever softwares, computer aided drafting or drawing.
Okay, Lillian, we're now at the end of our episode, the second
Okay, so many
session.
issues. It's
Yeah, we're just
I
skimming
haven't.
through
I know, I
topics.
know. Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe one or a few minutes of what you think about what you would advise female architects who are in mid-level or, struggling. And maybe you could also give a word or two in general to architects out there who's listening in, to the challenges in AI and, what we've discussed. Maybe, this is your floor now.
Well, I think you had in your earlier questions a question on the glass ceiling for women
Yeah, yeah,
architects. I think that's an important question. Um, and also you had a question on, do you actually face discrimination when you're working, in the actual day-to-day working world of, in construction? Um, and I would say that I don't think we actually face that much discrimination. I think the colleagues tend to be more careful. They're trying to help, and
yeah.
I don't think there is not so much. I mean, of course, sometimes you get
The subtle
somebody who are
ones.
just prejudiced and they think that you'll not be as good. But most of the time, they think that you can't handle and you need some help, which is the thing you need to dispel. I think most of us can quite handle it. Um, I think we must always never forget to consciously think that we must always believe uh, as if we are equals and never think that I need a bit more help because I'm a woman here.
Yeah.
In that we are all capable to do that extra bit, to clamber up those scaffoldings and things like that. Um, we need to, and that there is sometimes, of course, the glass ceiling. I don't think is totally a fallacy. It's still exist.
Mm,
It's tough. I think it's tough. Some
mm.
of it, as mentioned, is because of the extra responsibilities that a woman needs to uh, take up as a wife or mother, grandmother, even. So that is the extra responsibility, and the solution lies simply in the men taking more and sharing in the tasks. And I think today there's a more of that, but still not enough.
Mm.
And there's a lot more than in my mom's generation.
Societal change needed.
Yeah, there are. I've seen a lot of very new world type of husbands and fathers who who take time and share some of the responsibility, and that's a good thing. But they can be more. They can be more. There's still room for a lot more equitable participation in the upkeeping, of the household, of the matrimonial home, of the children of which belong to both equally. Yeah, I think so. And this, we didn't even get to some issues like whether women still face, conscious or not conscious, uh, um, get discriminated in terms of salaries and
Yeah.
promotions. I think that's still there in the world today. That's a battle that can be more easily overcome, that we should persist to put energies on. Because the thing of caring, the some women want to give their personal time and build that direct attachment with their child, that they want to bring up. But yeah, there are these issues I mentioned before that needs to be addressed.
There was a comment about this is not even in the podcast, but I talked to someone and they say that men have a better networking in terms of helping each other up higher positions than women. It's just naturally how they are in terms of the men networking thing, you know. So our conversation on that, if you wish to do another part later. But
Yeah,
yes,
because
I'm letting you off now.
okay, yeah. I hope you edit those which shouldn't be heard. If I've said anything that's
No, no, no. Okay, I will go and thank you very much, Architect Lillian, for contributing to this topic. Take care. Thank you.
yeah, thank you, Naziati, and thank you for your persistence. For so many years, you have not lost focus on the
Okay.
relevance of this issue
Yeah.
of getting more parity. In every aspect, working world, in the world of
Okay.
academia, as well. I'm sure you faced that as well.
Okay.
We
Bye.
always have to work that much harder, don't we?
Bye. I'm gonna off.
Okay, thank you.